Welcome everyone to my live stream here on lichess and Twitch. My name is International Master William Paschall. Don't forget guys, early is on time is late, and late is inexcusable. We are here 5 minutes late, sorry about that. So, we're going to be playing blitz and classical chess here for about 2.5 hours, and regular stream today, no funky openings. We'll do our best to play a lot of interesting stuff, though. 3 challenges from Hunt the King, Shan Shah, and Kyrgios. 3 regular players here. Good to see you guys. And let's see who's in the chat. Looks like we're streaming. I didn't have to restart the OBS. It's very strange. Didn't lose my video. So it's no dropped frames. It's really looking good today. Very odd. See you guys, another day of chess and trying to get better at the game, basically. And I think yesterday I had some good work going on, so we're going to continue that. We've got Hunt the King. We're going to start with this game right away. We're already behind schedule, so let's get started. We're playing white, play e4. You guys, what's up? I'm thinking about playing a tournament a month from now in Hungary. I'm excited. I'm probably going to go to that. There will come a time when I play in tournaments when I won't be able to stream, and I know you guys will go through withdrawal symptoms like you did when I played in Zalakaros in June. But it's a necessary evil. Still on the quest to improve, and just as you guys are. Knight f3, knight c6. I'm a believer in the Lopez, but the refutation of chess is a serious problem. My friend Julian Estrada and another friend Jose Gonzalez used to call it, even 20 years ago, this was the refutation of chess. You know, basically, we knew long ago that knight f6 was a serious problem. But a6 is more friendly, and we can resume the normal Roy Lopez. So what's up, Hunt the King? You're playing heads up now with me. a6, always good to see something other than knight f6. Against knight f6, I did a lecture series on chesslecture.com. There's nothing we can do. We just have to play d3, or maybe queen e2, or some kind of exchange variation, and hope for the best, you know. There's no way to play the normal lines of the Berlin defense endgame variation and get an advantage for white. That's a thing of the past. So Hunt the King plays b5. The Norwegian. I saw Shan Shah. Maybe that was why I said Icelandic. But the Norwegian variation. Bishop b3. Actually, I think of the Norwegian international master Johannesson, and that's of course a name that could be either Norwegian or Icelandic, of course. Bishop b3. He's kind of the inventor of this variation. I think he passed away in the last few years. Bishop b3. Silly Turtle said yesterday's game was very instructive for me. My blitz isn't strong yet. Don't worry about it, man. I mean, I think that's the way it's supposed to be. A lot of people, you know, I used to play a lot in a cafe in Boston and around a lot of playing for money, blitz and stuff, and a lot of players who weren't really well trained would of course be there. And I mean, the majority of players try to play blitz, try to be good at fast chess before they really understand the game at all, and they learn a lot of bad habits. So I think it's not a bad thing, you know, to not be good at blitz in the beginning. It really isn't a bad thing. Most people, they put too much emphasis on moving fast and not on just playing well. And I think first you have to become a strong player. And then, that's really the order you should do it. You know, try to become a strong player first, and then a fast player second. It's more important to really understand the game. So here d6 is unusual. Black's supposed to play knight a5. There are all kinds of fun variations, like bishop takes f7 check, but it's really probably not the critical, line. think after knight a5, white should play normal chess with castles and or maybe d4, but not anything fancy with bishop takes f7. I don't think it's really sound. But d6 here looks wrong. I don't know. I don't see what I can do immediately. You know, like bishop d5 doesn't win anything, and but you've got a kind of weird Steinitz defense where you played a6 b5 really early. I can certainly just play c3. If d4, pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, we have the old c5 idea. But there I have, I guess I don't have any outs, so to speak. If we trade everything on d4 and then and you play c5, I don't have any tricks with bishop takes f7 check. Queen d5, I lose a piece to c5, c4. The so-called Noah's Ark trap. It's that old, they call it the Noah's Ark trap. So let's just play like positional chess here. I don't know that there's any concrete refutation of d6. I could play a gambit if I was really in the mood to play a lively game. Maybe like d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, c3, or d4, pawn takes c3 is probably a strong gambit. I might have had d4, pawn takes bishop d5. So probably after d4, black should take with a knight. d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, e takes d4, c3. I think that's the variation that's interesting for white. This sort of like more a gambit-y type of pawn sacrifice. But I'm just going to play positionally here. Not going to try to blow you away. We could transpose to some kind of Steinitz where you've played b5 very early. But I'm not really threatening anything serious with c3. Letting you get away with this weird move order. Just want to build up the center. Crusader of Hope is sick. Sorry to hear that, man. You learned the trap is the Capablanca trap. That's interesting. Yeah, here we call it the Noah's Ark trap. But I guess I should refresh my exact memory on these variations, and because if I don't play d4, I guess I'm not getting very much here. I could castle. That's not really dangerous. It's really just a question of d4. I mean, I don't think there's anything else. Bishop d5. You could play even knight ge7, I guess. In that position is fine for black. So it's d4 or nothing else. But I didn't remember the theory of this pawn sacrifice gambit. d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, c3. Bishop e7. Perfectly reasonable move. Except I still have bishop d5, bishop d7. Now you don't have knight e7. Probably doesn't make a whole world of difference. Yeah. I don't think anything really clear comes of bishop d5 there. Bishop d5, bishop d7, d4, knight f6. Threatening my bishop. What can I do? So we just continue to play solidly. I've always been attracted to these kind of, you know, sort of utopian pawn center. What do we call it? The ideal pawn center. d4, e4. And this is just insane. f5. Cue up the Cypress Hill music, because f5 is just insane in the membrane. This is not good for black, dude. We can play bishop d5 now. Everything is good after f5. f5 is just totally crazy. We could take on e5. We could take even on f5. Although, yeah, I guess taking on f5 is an option. And then, of course, bishop d5 kind of looks the most obvious. Bishop d5 followed by taking on f5. I mean, how are you going to like play after that? So, yeah, f5 doesn't really fit the character of the rest of the game. I mean, b5 was weakening, but then you kind of calmed down and started to play solidly, and now another radically weakening move. I mean, you could probably only afford like one radically weakening pawn move in the first 8 moves of the black side of the Royal Pez, I think. You can afford one, f5 or b5, but I don't think that doing them both is feasible. After years of developing my intuition, I have the feeling this isn't good for black. Now, well, we can play either way. Pawn takes f5, pawn takes e5. Although, pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5, there's a question as to whether that really improves my position in any way. If I'm not going to win the pawn on e5, then I'm not sure it really benefits me. Pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5, bishop takes c6. Gives black enough counterplay that he's probably fine. So it looks like by process of elimination, PoE as they call it, you know, a useful thing to have in both chess and poker. PoE is one of my most important analytical concepts. Process of elimination like leaves us with pawn takes f5, which has to be the strongest move. And now we can play a couple of things, either bishop takes c6 and pawn takes e5, or bishop e6. And I suppose, I mean, letting him win the pawn on f5 back looks like a mistake, so. Actually, we have another move, pawn takes e5. Pawn takes e5 also fine for white, I guess. Ultimately, we've got to hold on to our extra pawn. We should try to at least hold on to our extra pawn. Bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, pawn takes e5. Pawn takes e5, and that's not that easy. So maybe I just take on e5, and what am I achieving there? Bishop e6. Alright, we're going to go for this. Keeping the pawn entrenched here in black's position could get a little weird here. I didn't see a clearly better line. Pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5, bishop takes c6. Bishop takes c6, then what? Castles, probably. I could have tripled pawns in that line. Not a big fan of that. Pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5. And then what? Castles, knight takes d5, queen takes d5. In retrospect, I guess I preferred that. I should have probably played that way. It just takes and castles. This is probably good for white too, but I'm not sure it's quite as good. It's gonna get a little bit bizarre, maybe. If I have to play like knight g5 and knight f7, well, I'm not gonna complain. I guess it's all good. Acronyms are confusing. PoE also could mean the game Pillars of Eternity or Path of Exile. Yeah, yeah. I thought that IDK is I don't care. Bishop BC. I'm not really into the acronyms. We'll just use the full words from here on out. Process of elimination. It's an underrated tool. Serious analytical tool. I use it every day of the week. Pawn takes e6. And I like white here. We've got knight g5, knight f7, if necessary. How about d5 now? He's going to be able to undermine that pawn chain. We change paths and decide to play for structure. I don't think it's necessary. Let's just play chess. Knight d5. Whoa. That's one way to stop me from playing d5. I really need to you really need to develop my pieces here, and it's getting kind of tough. All right, I don't know what to do, man. Black is just a tiny bit ahead in development here. I feel like you got away with murder to not be completely lost. Absolutely. Maybe knight d2 is a very solid move. Just letting you play knight f4 if you want to. I don't care. I'm just gonna play solid and fill up my pieces. But black's probably okay here. Man, yeah. I have a small positional advantage, but it's not too serious. Man, I feel like a real donkey for letting you get away with this. Bishop g5 I'm not sure is a good move either. I'm trading a relatively good bishop for a kind of bad bishop. So I'm up no material. I have a tiny structural advantage in exchange for, well, relative activity for black. So I think the game is equal at this point, dynamically equal. It's really a catastrophe. Really a catastrophe for me. I think I made a mistake even suggesting exchange of bishops. Way to hang in there, man. This was very bad play by me to let you get to this position with equal material and relatively equal chances. After f5 you should have been toast. So I feel like a little disappointed with myself. e4 square a la Petrosian. Hunt the king hanging tough, but finally that exchange releases the tension, I think, a little early. You don't need to release the tension there, but we're both with very little time left, I realize. Oops. Alright, I'll simplify here. I'm still not winning any material. I am winning material here. Oh, simplify. I'm simplifying. Sorry, I forgot. It's not like check when you trade rooks. Alright, so finally you blundered. But nice game, man. You really hung tough, and it wasn't easy. I don't think I was that much better toward the end at all. I don't think I was better at all at some point. You have enough active play there. So, interesting game, but F5 looks totally crazy. Kyriakos Pes Geese, King Wiki, Mule Skinner, Thug Life. Bronx Defense. Bronx, let us know when you post a link, like just kind of what it is. E4, I mean, you don't have to like go into great detail, but just like a little disclaimer. E4, what are we going to play against? Shansha. It's been a while. I want to try something different. I think he was quite... D takes E was quite the winning move there. D takes E instead of what did I do? What did I do again? I don't remember. Alright, against Shansha, I want to play something different. He knows my repertoire by now. We've played enough games. And I'm a little bored of him kind of preparing stuff. So, from the practical side of things, I want to kind of keep him thinking for himself. Welcome everybody, I'm International Master William Paschall. We are streaming from Budapest, Hungary, and it is Thursday, October 20th. What are we going to play? Old school repertoire. Scheveningen. Jeroen, is Jeroen here today? I didn't see him so far. I did not see him here in the stream, our faithful moderator. Yeah, I don't think he's online. I don't see him on lichess. Maybe he took the day off. We'll have to leave it to MoveBot. Change it to MoveBot for chess. So Shansha taking his opening preparation out of the window. Cheese with whitish mold. I think that's normal, man. A lot of cheese has whitish mold on it. I'm not a big fan. I like the bluish mold better, but it's kind of the nature of the beast. Doesn't all that like fancy cheese have white mold on it? Alright, D6. What's up? He's not prepared. He's going back to the office to get his notes on the Scheveningen. He'll be back in a couple minutes with his files after D6. Yeah, this was my original Sicilian repertoire. Old school. Kasparov and Nikitin wrote, Kasparov's trainer, Nikitin wrote a really good book on the Sicilian Scheveningen. Very comprehensive, but this is like in the late 80s, so we're going back to some really old theoretical knowledge. I played the Scheveningen probably up until around like 1993, when I switched a little later, probably like around 95. I started playing Accelerated Dragon and whatnot. But what's going on? What's going on, Mr. Shansha? Bishop E3. Okay. This is a professional move order. Black can play, of course, either knight c6 or a6. a6 transposes to, like, Najdorf. I'm sure Shansha would be happier with transposition to the Najdorf. He probably knows that a little bit better. fond of topical modern theory. But this is kind of a formative and important variation of the Sicilian for both sides. White should not play bishop b5 check. Online wiki, interesting question. Yeah, for whatever reason, I mean, bishop b5 check, it's not really dangerous. It's kind of like playing bishop b5 in the Richter-Rauser classical Sicilian. There's nothing wrong with it per se. Just it's not really considered problematic. So he's playing what we call the English attack, I suppose. Similar to a Richter-Rauser, except the bishop's on e3. A little different. Alright, now I have to decide what kind of variation I'm going to play here. Nothing wrong with just like bishop e7, castles, king side. Kasparov has played these lines with black. Last time I played this was years ago, and I got into the position in a weird way against now Grandmaster David Bertsesh, who went to UTD. He went on to go to UTD. I guess he's living in the U.S. I'm not sure, but G4 is kind of early here. Anytime you see G4, you know, it's like usually a situation where black should consider playing D5 probably. But I'm not like sure it's necessarily the best move. We can just play a normal kind of move with A6 and go into our spiel. Opposite side castling. Now I absolutely crushed Bertsesh the last time I played the black side of an English attack. It was funny, he played like how was it, like D4 against me. He was a D4 player at the time. I guess he still is. D4, knight F6, knight F3. And I played... Is that right? Yeah. He played D4, knight F6, knight F3. And then he played... And I played C5 there. And that doesn't make sense. How did this go down? Oh, I know how it was. I tried to play the English defense. It must have been D4, E6, knight F3, and I played C5, and I was shocked. He played E4. I was like, what are you doing, man? You don't play the white side of the Sicilian. He played E4. I was like, okay. So we played the Scheveningen, and I just crushed him because he was like a D4 player with white. It was really strange. All right, so now we go into, you know, probably a variation I played a million times. Not so much lately. Although G4, again, isn't the most usual move order for white. It could also be reached by a Najdorf move order. But this doesn't really scare me. I think the only thing that scares me, and the only reason I don't play the Scheveningen, is the classical reason that most people are afraid to play the Scheveningen, which is the Curies attack. So if we look at the English attack, I mean, the English attack is kind of a watered down version of the Curies attack. The Curies attack is where you play like 6G4, and you don't necessarily have to play F3. I mean, F3 is kind of a wasted move. It's not a bad move, but it's not as dangerous for black as I think B4 is even a move here. But not necessarily best. So now we're gonna play, I guess, Kasparov Topalov style. Quick rook C8. This is the way that Kasparov used to play with black. It took me a long time. I used to mess around with doing things like Queen A5 and took me a long time to realize that this is probably black's best plan. Get the pieces to the c file. Put pressure on e4. But I haven't played this in ages. This used to be my kind of standard repertoire with black. But it's a very sharp position with chances for both sides. Not a drawish line, obviously. But if you want to draw, I don't recommend playing the Sicilian. This is probably kind of the starting point for theory. Bishop g2 looks kind of strange. Very, very strange move by white. It does support e4. That's the only thing I like about it. You know, it's gonna prevent me from making any kind of sort of sacrifices on e4 for certain. I'm going to take a minute here to kind of figure out what's going on. Knight c5 or knight e5 are both... Knight c5 and knight e5 are both very different sort of plans. With knight c5... there's a very strong temptation to try to put my knight on c4. Let's see, but it's not that easy, you know, to... with his bishop on d4, not that easy to do anything. Rook c4 also interesting. Very unusual bishop g2 move. I don't think you're going to find that in any high-level games. What to do? b4 knight e2 a5, b4 knight a4. b4 knight a4 may not be that easy for me to do anything. b4 knight a4, bishop c6. Queen takes b4. This looks really awkward for white. He might lose a piece there. d5. Yeah, probably loses a piece. Not really sure where I'm going. I don't know. If b4, he probably doesn't play that move. Well, now it's simply a blitz game. Black should be okay because of bishop g2, more or less. Now, knight to b4. A3. Knight takes C2 doesn't work. Oh my god. He finds A3. Who would find A3? Man, that's impossible to find that move. How could you find that move with seconds left? Oh my god. Okay, but it's weakening his king side very, very badly, A3. I'm not sure that it's a good thing. Or his king side, queen side, whatever the heck it is. It's the queen side, okay? Don't criticize me. Is that the king side or the queen side? He's weakening his whatever side of the board that is. Basically. That's the moral of the story. A3, man, it's very serious weakening of the queen side, king side, whatever place that is. You found A3. That's because I didn't even see the option of knight takes C2. Yeah, I thought he was just blundering at first. Well, I have to be careful. There goes my mating attack that I wanted to have. Okay, I'm not going to play G6. Screw that. Sees everything. He's the 5-second increment master. Totally missed that move. Yeah. So sort of a silly game. All right, Kiri Kospez. What's up, guys? It's a horrible, horrible game to lose. White never misses anything. Man, just totally White was lost there. That's very, very angry me after that game. That's terrible. I was just totally winning. So angry with myself. Knight f3, d6. I'm going to play this. This line isn't very good, but I think it's fairly solid for black. So this is horrible for me to lose that last game. I don't mind when I get outplayed, but just to lose in the increment on time when I had a crushing position is... Every time Shansha just plays this 5-second increment perfectly. I guess I should give up my bishop for knight right away here. By the way, guys, I just want to remind you, if you do challenge me, you've got to have an account that has like established games. So if anybody has like less than 50 games or something, I can only play people who have established accounts. Somebody was like bragging about trolling me. And I was thinking it was probably some guy. This happened in an online simul yesterday. There was a strange account that was bragging about trolling me in my streams. I think this is probably the person who was like creating accounts and using computers to play with me. So that's why I have to enact this this policy where I'm not going to play anybody who doesn't have an established kind of account. Alright, so D takes e5. The one flaw in lichess is just too easy to keep creating multiple accounts. I don't know how they can stop that, really. The nature of the beast of having a free chess site. But I think it needs to be a little bit stricter somehow. D takes e5. D takes e5. I don't really want to trade pieces. I've got the pawn fork at e4. So we lost against Shansha from a position where we were probably winning. But I didn't like when I decided to play knight d8. You know, I think I probably have to just sacrifice e6 or just let him have something and keep going with the queenside attack. I had moves like knight to b4. Maybe I just have to not back away. Once I played knight to d8, and I saw the tactic with knight d5, but he saw it instantly with seconds on the clock. Pretty impressive. Bishop e2, e4. We have space here, but our bishop isn't that good. On c8, it's not bad though. With the extra space, this kind of bad bishop after e4, it's not a bad piece. Kira Kospez playing well. Positionally, we've got space to compensate for your bishop pair. This is a kind of standard game. White has a powerful bishop on the long diagonal though. Masterful play. I mean, we even had a moderator on this stream trolling with his play. Well, it hasn't been like proven scientifically. I was suspicious for a long time about that though. I didn't just bring it up one day because I felt I was, you know, just that day I decided to spring it on everybody. I didn't feel he was really straightforward for a long time. But I'm still like not convinced what he was doing. Anyway, what I don't want to play are computer accounts that are generated the day that the day that they play me, basically. When we start getting to that point, you know, if you're gonna cheat against me, at least do it in a convincing way. Rook on a to d1, bishop g4 maybe. Has the disadvantage that it gives him knight f5 sometimes. Wow, you're really playing this well. I don't know. I don't like black that much here. I have some space. Well, I'm not really that convinced about my position. Maybe c6, just keeping him off of b5 and stuff. I don't know about this move. It's probably not a bad move. I don't like how many pawns I have on the same color of my bishop, essentially. But the space I have with e4 sort of compensates for the powerful threats he has on the long diagonal. What are you guys' favorite lines from e4? I'm a beginner, says d takes c13, and not very good from black. Well, I like to play the Sicilian, e4 c5, but I've also been working with more classical openings here, sometimes playing e4 e5. I also play the Caro-Kann, sometimes a lot of other stuff. Wednesdays we have a weird opening stream when I experiment with different openings. Yesterday, every time I try to upload the Wednesday stream, I run into problems, I think because of the name of the stream. But I finally got it uploaded. Yesterday's Wednesday weird opening stream. Some kind of filter about the words that you use in the names for your stream seems to get triggered every Wednesday. I have my theory about it, but it's difficult to know exactly why the uploads weren't working on Wednesdays. But now I think I figured it out. Rook on f to e1, it's kind of a weird move. I don't think he really has a plan here. I have to watch the long diagonal. Rook on f to e1, maybe it's some subtle idea, I don't know, to counteract something on the e file. Wants to play bishop f1, I don't know. I have to keep the f5 square protected. We can't let a knight come to f5. And I don't want to go into like an endgame though, because I think that white's bishops are pretty good here. I was actually thinking about h5, h4, trying to grab some space. I think ultimately that might just weaken my position. So how are we to play this position as black? Knight to g4, like a probing move. We can probably induce him to weaken himself. This is the problem in some variations of the Nimzo Indian. You're trading the bishop on c3. White's got a bishop pair, and he doesn't have doubled pawns. So it doesn't seem like black has quite enough compensation for the bishop that I've given up. Bishop is extremely powerful. I would prefer white here. Not really happy with the result of this opening. Not sure what I did that I don't like. Again, I played a5 kind of early. I don't think I need to play that move a5 so early. I have a tendency to do that, but though in this position it sort of makes sense now. But here he's letting me force him to play some kind of radically weakening move. He could play f4, but I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, f4, pawn takes f3 en passant, and knight takes f3 would really... I guess it's possible. He has that choice f4 or g3. Now he has two weak squares, d3 and f3. So he has to constantly worry about both. I have bishop g4 sometimes. From a practical standpoint, I guess black has good chances. But he should have played h3 instead and avoided this problem. After queen c7, h3, I think he's still clearly better. Well, slightly better, whatever. Slightly better for white. Not that easy for black to come up with a plan. If he played h3. Now he has some concrete weaknesses. And I think black has good chances. There's so much to chess I've really done so far is play a few games and read through a Bobby Fischer back-ranked checkmate book. The... what was that? Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess or something? The illegally published book? Not illegally published, but like he was angry that book was ever like... was ever printed. Now bishop g4. The old book, the Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess book. I'm thinking that you're talking about. Fischer was very, very angry about the publication of that. I guess they didn't have. I don't know how it worked legally, but I'm sure they had his permission. I remember I got that book when I was a little kid. Well, I was, I don't know, like 12 years old or something. Not a big deal. Yeah, they're trying to kind of use Fischer's name to sell a beginner's chess book. I think Fischer had a lot of like ongoing lawsuits. And now we're in business because we can trade a pair of bishops, and much easier to coordinate with the two knights than it is with a bishop and knight, and it also takes away his quote unquote advantage of the two bishops. He has concrete weaknesses on the white squares, and I've got 4 pieces really in the vicinity that can, even my rook maybe, can all kind of work on the white square weaknesses. Perfectly legal under Soviet law. Oh wait, we're not talking about the same book. Oh, the Soviet publisher. I think we're talking about a different book, but I don't know what book he was talking about. I'm speculating about Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess, or what was it? Was that the title of it? There was one really, really basic book. I thought it was Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess, but I can't remember the title perfectly. King G2. Can he hold on with that? C5 could be a nasty sort of surprise. Also simply maybe like knight f3 is good. This way he just loses the exchange. And G4 is best move. It's a good try. We gotta watch out for the mate here. So, and knight f5 is kind of nasty actually. Knight f5 is pretty nasty. I don't really want to See that knight f5. Man. To kind of batten down the hatches somehow and play like knight e8. But how am I going to do that? Rook d8. Knight f5 is really brutal. I'm running out of time myself. He lost on time. I don't know what's going on here at the end though. I'm not sure. I'm going to play f6. I guess black is clearly better, but I'm not sure it's winning. I would play pawn takes, queen takes, check, king f1, f6, blocking the long diagonal. Slightly better position for black, I guess. Alright, interesting games today. White was better out of the opening there, though. I didn't solve my problems. Geese, I'm going to play d4. Bobby Fischer teaches chess, right? It says by Bobby Fischer. It's very basic. Anyway, he had some lawsuits with them. Alright, c4. But Fischer was perhaps had given some kind of permissions. I don't know, maybe it was a misunderstanding on Fischer's part. But my understanding was that he always claimed that that book was something he was cheated by. Alright, so it's King's Indian. f3. My 60 memorable games. That an unauthorized Russian print. Now, I think that my 60 memorable games was legitimately printed with Fischer's permissions. It was the Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess book that was questioned. Okay, e5 now. e5 is like the old school. I used to play this with black. Later I converted to playing c5. But e5 is interesting, you know, it's pretty decent line. We can play d5 here. And of course, there's Bronstein's idea of d5, knight h5, queen d2, queen h4 check, g3, knight takes g3. Is that it? Alright. Kasparov actually played this variation, I remember, against Timman. Jan Timman in the news for his rematch against Karpov. Seniors rematch. Timman and Karpov look horrible. So d5, knight h5. This is the old school style chess. Not really a lot of other options. I mean, knight d7 I don't really like, Geese, because in some variations the knight goes to, like, well, knight d7 is, I guess, not that bad, but blocks the bishop on c8. You don't have counterplay against e4 like you do in, like, other lines of the King's Indian. So this is very early to play knight d7. There's going on this matches in Hoogeveen in the Netherlands. A match between Ivan Sokolov and a young Dutch player, Van Foresten. Hu Yifan against Nigel Short. Kind of exhibition matches. I mean, not really critical from the highest level of chess standards. But I don't really like the way that these Sokolov Van Forest games look like two wild maniacs playing in in a blitz tournament or something. Queen d2, a5. Queen d2, a5. What's up with a5? Just securing the c5 square. So, reasonable, right? Reasonable. We go kingside here. We just try to grab all the space like Ivan Sokolov. The fully Ivan Sokolov approach with g4. You could also play a different order of moves, like maybe h4 first. But h4 allows maybe knight h5. Looks kind of weird for black. h4, knight h5. And I can actually castle queenside here. There's probably nothing wrong with castling queenside. You could go for it. I don't fear this. I don't fear this position. It's not that usual to castle queenside on the king's in a King's Indian, but my e4 pawn is very stable, and now we can like launch an attack in a position of opposite side castling. I could opt to leave my king in the center, but this is also okay here. Nothing wrong with knight c5. But it doesn't put any pressure on e4. I mean, there's a lot of variations where, you know, white doesn't have a pawn on f3. And so knight c5 has the concrete function that it puts pressure on e4. The least of white's problems in the Samish variation is the e4 pawn. So 99.9% of cases in the King's Indian Samish, I mean, it's just not that usual for black to play like knight c5 because it doesn't threaten anything. It just sort of hangs out there like a vulture. But it's not the most sensitive point in white's position. So I'm not sure about the usefulness of the plan of playing knight c5. Kind of feels very routine. And I don't think it's that appropriate in the f3 lines. If we look at this position, how Kasparov played with black in games against like Timon, you play like knight h5. And then when Timon plays like queen d2 and castles queenside, black played not like a5, knight d7, knight c5. Black wants to open lines on the queenside. Kasparov's plan was a6 with the idea of b5, opening lines against the white king. And then sometimes he would play even like c5 to kind of get extra space, play like a6 and b5. So you need to open lines, but with this setup, it's hard for black to open lines. How are you going to open lines against my king here? It's not easy to do. c6 has a lot of problems along the d file and whatnot. So now g4, he could sacrifice a piece actually. But I don't think it's enough. You could sacrifice a piece on g4, but I don't really think that's really fully sound. Bishop takes g4, bishop takes c5, for one thing. Bishop d7, like h4. King b1 is also a pretty useful move for white here. Perhaps not necessary. Knight ge2, knight g3. Maybe we plan on developing some pieces. He could sacrifice a piece with bishop takes g4, pawn takes g4, knight takes g4. I'm not really certain, you know, that he's getting enough compensation. Queen e8. Queen e8 is you know, he can't play b5. Maybe my attack's not fast enough, though. I don't know. He can't play b5. He can't play c6. It's hard to get at my king. White's attack is going to be very strong when it lands. If it lands in time. And king h8. And I play one prophylactic move here, king b1. No, just so variations where he like sacrifices a piece on g4. Maybe he doesn't have bishop h6, skewering my queen to my king. Gets my king off the c file. It's not absolutely necessary to play king b1, but it's kind of a standard move. Getting the king a little bit further away from the center. White has a clear attack. Black doesn't have a clear attack. That's the problem with the pawn structure. I could even play like knight to b5. I mean, I don't know. This happens in Petrosian variation too. I mean, if I was to like stick my knight on b5, what would black do? You know? Let's say instead of king c1, I mean, just I went here. What would black do in that position? I mean, he almost has to play like queen back to d8, right? Anytime you play queen e8 in the king's Indian, you need to think about what's going to happen if the other guy plays knight b4, knight b5. In this position, he would have to move the queen again. Maybe he could play like queen b8, you know, something like that. Okay, so now a3. If a3 happens, I could play maybe b3. He can't really sacrifice a piece there. Is it worth thinking about like a3? I recently did a game in a King's Indian where, an old game where Eugenio Torre just absolutely crushed Sammy Reshevsky. This was back in like IBM 1977 or something. And he played a3 in a similar position. Just stopping it, you know. Is it knight b3 an issue? Or is it something I can afford? Basically, that's my question. a3, knight b3, like queen f2 or something. I don't think I need to like bother with that. I'm not afraid of a3, b3. Black's counterplay is too slow, and our attack is very strong. Van Foreest. Ivan Sokolov played a similar kind of thing with white, but it was an Averbach. It's a different line. And those guys, I don't know, man. I don't think the King's Indian was meant to be played like that. Bishop on g7 is blocked by e5. e5 isn't going anywhere. White has a solid hold on b5, c6. Collapses everything, right? Anias Asiana. I think you've got a good grasp of what's going on. Knight g8, very reasonable move under the circumstances. Black is in a bad way here. This is kind of the first attack that everybody learns, you know, like the Yugoslav dragon and the bishop, queen, rook on the h file. I think most beginners who are trained by learning from theory and books are attracted to these kind of primitive attacking schemes very early on, often, and it's the most classic kind of kingside attacking position in chess. Of course, much more commonly seen in openings where white doesn't play c4. It's not that usual. Only in the samish variation really is it possible. Some lines of maybe... We've seen Tomaszewski recently playing the Makaganov variation with h3, and he plays a very, very quick h3 and g4 against the King's Indian. Kind of similar sort of strategy, but I played the King's Indian for black, so I know what's up. Geese there, just total desperation. b5 is not going to change anything. And we just keep all the lines closed. And now, for our next trick, I mean, I guess queen h2 is pretty strong, honestly. Subtle threats along the h file. Yeah, and here I don't want him to close the line, so my idea is g5. Kind of, this is a model example of how this kind of attack should go down for white, Now black is trying to find some kind of counterplay here. Sacking an exchange. It's a good practical try. Good practical try by black. If we just take on h6 first. Another good practical try. So he keeps the lines closed. Nice. I guess I have to take this exchange now. Take the exchange. I can chop his knight on c5 too at some point. I don't know if I want to take on g6 though. If I take on g6, it might open up some counterplay for black along the f file. So I guess objectively we shouldn't do that. Objectively not at this time. Not at this time. So I don't know if I misplayed this, but there's no clear checkmate or anything like that. I don't know if I want to take that knight, actually. Kind of running out of time, though. Nice defense by Geese on the practical level. check. It's check. That was timely. And what a fighter. Oh, man. You almost managed to hang on. Yes. Alright. I don't like my technique, though. I felt like you should have been a dead man, and again, you got away. So I'm a little overly optimistic. Whenever I have a good position, I think that they should just roll over and die, but it looks like it's not that easy to win chess games. You really have to... and I'm white a lot today. You really have to bear down, especially in good positions. Welcome everybody to my chess stream. International Master William Paschall. We're streaming from Budapest, Hungary. It's Blitz and Classical Chess here on lichess.org. I still believe white, we should have tried to mate. The exchange up is understandable. What did I miss? A direct mating threat. I should have played for mate instead of winning the exchange. But my materialistic instincts took over. No, I'm not really that materialistic. Bishop f5, this is... This is a rare move. There's nothing really wrong with bishop f5, right? Bishop f5, yeah, this ending, I guess. This ending should be slightly better for white. After queen b6, c5. It's basically like a... It's basically like a London system with colors reversed. C takes d. Queen takes b3, a takes b3, e takes d, knight c3, and then e6, knight b5? Is that the line? C takes d5, c takes d5, queen takes d5, e6. There was this guy who used to play this variation against me in Blitz in the cafe years ago. He would play it again, and again, every single game. This weird gambit. But the position was different. The knights were on f6 and c3. And he would play like c takes d, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, pawn takes d5, queen takes d5, and then e6. And every single game I would beat him up like a pawn. And he just kept playing it and playing it, no matter how many times he lost. But I'm not sure about this position after c takes d, queen takes queen. Then I play like knight c3, knight f6 or e6, knight b5. Looks wrong. I'm threatening knight c7 check. But that's actually hard for black to meet. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's theory. I'm not sure here, though. Nisab says, are you in Budapest? Welcome to Hungary, man. Thank you. You're 160 kilometers away. We're about... Holwaj. Well, I didn't just arrive. I've been here for a while. A little while. C takes d5. Yo Regal Kivanok. Haven't had a lot of Magyars in the stream, of course. A couple of friends of mine, Hungarians, sometimes stop by the stream to watch, but now I thought you would go into this ending. So queen takes d5, knight to c3, e6. Knight c3, e6 might be okay for black in this position. The queen takes d5, e6, queen back to b3. Feels like white's kind of losing the initiative here. Queen takes d5, e6, queen b3, Black is up quite a bit of development. Queen takes b3, a takes b3, knight c6. Alright, let's try it. It's interesting. I'm not sure if this is objectively correct for white. Not sure about a lot of things. Maybe we can take the pawn and sort of just hang on to it. That would be my goal in this position. Central pawn, it's very important, this pawn here. If we can hang on to that pawn, white's got a winning endgame, basically. So, until proven otherwise, I'm taking this pawn and trying to hang on. But I think there's probably other ways for white to play this position that aren't quite as materialistic. I wasn't really sure, though. It's pretty rare. I'm bishop f5 in this position. I guess the problem is I can't play knight c3. I mean, if I play knight c3, e6, I did that against John Shaw once, the Scottish IM in Hastings, and I just like lost. I was like, oh my god, I have no advantage. After knight c3, e6, he slowly beat me with black. It was terrible. So then I was like, oh wait a minute, I'm supposed to play queen b3. But you can also play c takes d for white, I guess. Go into a form of the exchange variation. Bishop e4 check, I'm not really sure about that. You might want to have that square for your knight sometimes. So I think that white has a good choice here. Bishop d2 or knight c3 are both good. I would think in this position both moves are fine for white, black. Bishop d2 or knight c3. Both are fine. Yeah, let's play the natural move, knight c3. I don't think that black has enough compensation here for the sacrificed pawn. He has some, but knight f6, e3. Again, bishop d2 maybe. E3 allows bishop e5 check, and I get out of there quickly, but he has queen takes b5. So I can't be too hasty. I'm probably going to have to play bishop d2 no matter what. Bishop d2 next. I could have played bishop d2 right away as well. Could have played bishop d2 on move 8. 8, move 9, or move 10. But a6 is too slow. I've got no threat to play bishop b5 check. I just said that. I've got queen takes b5. You cannot afford to waste a tempo here. I don't think that black can afford to waste a tempo here. I don't know if I should waste time myself with bishop d2. At this stage, bishop e2 followed by castle kingside, and I think I'm just like winning basically. Not winning exactly, but black does not have enough here for the sacrificed pawn. So this is what we were playing for, basically, to be up an extra central pawn, and black now has an awkward situation. In fact, we're even threatening a3. So objectively, this should be very little chances for black to save this game down a clear central pawn as he is here. Have to check the theory afterwards, but I don't know, why is it that, you know, I mean, if bishop f5 was a good move, everybody would play this. I should know it cold though. E3 transposes to lame variations of the Slav. So it's only c takes d or queen b3, and I'm not sure which one is better. Queen b3 or c takes d. I hate the exchange variation for white. I think it's really, really lame. So I'm not a big fan of playing c takes d. Black to play it's a really important pawn white is up, not just like any pawn. I mean, this is like, you know, the most important pawn in the position. It's not like I'm up an extra rook pawn. A3. We can trade queens and play like maybe B4. It's not absolutely necessary to trade queens, but I think it's probably the safe thing to do here. Unfortunately, he blundered. There's no tricks. I think he didn't realize he had bishop a5, maybe. Maybe he thought he had to lose a piece. That's what I'm thinking, you know. It's not that he didn't like the queen trade, he just didn't realize. Maybe King Wicky's not listening to my stream because earlier, maybe he turns it off or something. Because earlier, when I said about bishop e5 check not being possible, I know there's a 2-second delay, but still, he should have enough time to hear me say that, you know, a6 isn't necessary in that position. So I think he's not listening to my commentary, possibly. Which is up to you guys. I mean, whether you want to listen to it or not while you're playing. I think it can be distracting. Years ago when I used to play consultation blitz games with my, at the time, friend Roman Gingiashvili, oftentimes we would play badly when we played games together. It's actually this too many cooks spoils the soup kind of thing. When you're mixing your ideas with the ideas of someone else in a very quick game, sometimes it doesn't really gel very well. And I think sometimes my commentary can be distracting to your concentration and take away from your train of thought, basically. So it may be best not to listen while you're actually playing against me. Knight b3. Of course, you are going to miss out on some information. But this is lost. But anyway, I want to review this variation. It's something you don't encounter very often. Bishop f5 on move 3. We can just snap some pawns here, but it's a little bit like greedy. I'm just going to centralize my king. Play e4. Bring the king to e3. This is not, these pawns are not going anywhere. I mean, I could take on a6 as well, but it's not really necessary. When you're a piece up, I would take 0 risks, basically. The more material you're up, I mean, the less risk you need to take. If you're up nothing, you can take some risks, maybe. If you're up a pawn, I would take limited risks. If you're up a piece, you don't go out of your way to win material. No, now I'll start collecting some things, maybe. I doubt he can protect a6, so this is gonna go. It's very easy to win this pawn duo, and then promote my b pawn. That's the plan. The classic bad Slav bishop here on g6 has nowhere to go. But that in itself loses games sometimes in the Slav. Just that bishop being a bad piece in this kind of f3 sort of setup. I mean, knight takes b5, bishop takes b5 is probably good as well. But I think we can maybe try to coordinate first. Coordinate a little bit. And rook takes b5. I'm not giving him any sort of counterplay. He's still going to get his counterplay of some kind. We can play knight c5. There's no counterplay against that. We just win the pawn. We don't let him get any kind of tricks against the b4 pawn. Not going to give him anything back. I'm just taking what's mine, and he's not going to get a single pawn back. So we want to be accurate. to the very end. No counterplay. Yeah, the classic Slav torture position, you have to like play like bishop g8, bishop g8, f6, crawl the bishop back into the game with like bishop g8, f6. It's horrible sometimes. I never played the Slav with black though. It's a very trendy, probably the most popular defense against d4 since a long time. I would say the last 15 years. Okay, thank you for the game, sir. Mule Skinner, Fresh Clam, Azimli Soitari, Fide Master Strength is a new one. Fide Master Strength is from Bosnia. Fide Master Strength, that's cool. 5-4, that's fine. Perfect. And Crazy View, no, Crazy XX Crazy. Okay, hopefully we can get to all these games, guys. Mule Skinner. So Mule Skinner is a new account for me here on the stream. We only played them 3 times. I'm going to play a classical defense e4, e5. Those of you that know me better than most will know that I don't play e5 very often, and I'm not, by any stretch of the imagination, really well, studied on the black side of e4, e5. I used to play the Petrov a little bit, but I'm trying to learn how to play this. Now d3 is a kind of positional quiet Lopez here. Having seen d3 now, we can play d6. And I don't have to commit to weakening my queen side with b5. It's a matter of taste. I mean, some people, they like playing b5 no matter what. But I think objectively, what I'm doing here is kind of standard. Bishop d7 is not essential either. I can play g6 right away. But I think this is a pretty standard approach. Considered one of black's most reliable ways of meeting this quiet setup. It's more like a gioco pianissimo, I should say, where white, the gioco piano is actually like bishop c4 and c3. Gioco pianissimo is when we play with d3 and bishop c4, and these positions are much more like a d3 bishop c4 type game. So this is the idea. We'll play King's Indian style, and that's all it really is. I mean, if you look at this position, it's really not any different from, the King's Indians I've played, for example, there is like radical h4. I wouldn't hesitate to play like bishop g4 in that position. So Mule Skinner doesn't get tempted by this wild sort of idea. I don't think it's really sound. We had a similar game against a guy named Andrea from Italy yesterday, or the other day, where he played like h4 in a similar type position. It's not really good. Only in certain situations can you play like h4. So it's really like a King's Indian. I mean, if you compare this position to the Tory attack, where white plays like d4, knight f3, bishop g5 against the King's Indian, and some of the variations that arise from that, if you compare this position, it's actually very similar. So objectively, it shouldn't be dangerous for black. What should we do here in this type of King's Indian position, though? I'm not really sure. Not really sure what our plan is in this position. I wanted to play kind of classically in the center. Maybe trading a set of pieces wouldn't be bad, but I'm not really sure per se. I want to move my knight here to trade a pair of pieces. Where would my knight go? Is there a good place for my knight to go? Not really. You can grab space with b5 here if you want to. b5, bishop c2, knight a5, or something like that. I don't really find myself that interested. I think maybe king h8 is an interesting idea. Kind of King's Indian style. Giving us an extra retreat for the knight on g8, perhaps. Positional plans of like knight positional. positional. Knight g8, bishop h6 to trade the bad bishop. That's an idea. Definitely an idea. But there's more to it than that. I mean, with king h8, we can also move the knight and play f5. You know, it's pretty reasonable. Instead of king h8, though, maybe rook e8. I'm not really sure I like rook e8 that much. So, what would a classical player here do? What would, say, Alekhine do in this position? Queen e7, some kind of logical developing and also central move. And is white threatening d4? That's another question. We have to ask ourselves, is white threatening d4? I would think if I play something like knight g8, I'm really asking for it, you know? So I'm not sure I should really close the center here. Even king h8, I mean, I should move away from the center with something like knight g8. I'm just inviting d4. But we could go like Kasparov. King's Indian style, knight e7, knight e8. That's wild. If I play knight e7, he could play bishop takes bishop. I feel like I'm abandoning the center. But I like the way that Muleskinner, this position is very solid. Queen e7, or, you know, I didn't discuss d5 at all, but it seems to lose a pawn. Really, knight g8 leaves the center. Queen e7 seems okay, but a little bit lame. At least it's a constructive move. These knights aren't that good, you know. I mean, I like the knight on e3 better than on g3. Because on e3 you have like ideas of the d5 square. I'll maybe bring my rook to the center. It's just sort of bishop g5. That's a very subtle move. Particularly strong against queen e7. I'm going to have to play h6 now. He's inducing me to play h6. But I think now we have to go into... I mean, now we could play d5, but it's... I'm not really sure I'm set up for that. So I think I prefer knight g8. We could also play knight to h7. Queen d2. But it doesn't seem like white has... Not sure what white's going to do about this, basically. Very primitive plan to play f5, f4 probably wins. May just win a piece. Probably just wins a piece for something. Even my queen is protected on e7, so if he does like rook e1, I play f4. Bishop takes f4, rook takes f4, queen takes f4, pawn takes f4, rook takes e7, knight takes e7. Bishop takes c6 doesn't help. So, I guess white is just busto here. Didn't really prepare himself for the active push f5. There's nothing to do, I guess. Yeah, there's nothing he can do. Just like, we'll lose a piece. Kind of tragic, because it looked pretty good. It looked pretty good. I mean, even bishop g5 seemed reasonable. But, you know, here, maybe it's not a beautiful move, but maybe... Okay, bishop h4 is pretty awkward. Maybe bishop d2, you know, is a lot better. You're just not getting forked by the push. I'm not sure that's the only, you know... That magically makes white's position good, but... I mean, still, I'd probably try to execute the same thing, but I think he should have played d4 at some point. Maybe just instead of, like, right away, instead of bishop g5, he can play d4, and there's no tricks tactically on the bishop on a4. I think after queen e7, I wasn't really happy with queen e7, honestly. I'm not sure. I even thought about this. Maybe this is not a bad idea. What I talked about, like knight e7, just to try to trade pieces. I can curl up into like a ball on the king's side. I don't know. Knight h5. So f4, what else can you do? So you can sacrifice a piece or a couple pawns here. That's about it, right? He's got some little tricks. But I think I have to do this. He'll get away if I don't. Maybe I had a more subtle move order, but I don't think so. No, I have to do it now. Strike while the iron is hot. He's got 2 pawns for a piece after this. And I still have some kingside threats, though. My bishop now eyeing the h3 pawn, rook along the f file. I don't mind if he takes my bishop on g7. This piece is not a great entity in this position. I wouldn't mind selling my bishop for that knight on h5, though there are some tactical tricks. Maybe like, all right, well, this is without a doubt only move. He's got a knight fork on g6. Okay, so now we have to be a little bit careful. There's knight g6. So we can play queen f7, I guess. That's pretty strong. Queen f7. Yeah. He's got some tricks even there, but queen f7, knight h4, knight e7. I'm not really buying this. Get off the e file. We've got even tactics, so like bishop takes h3. Black is very compact. The only weakness I have is the g6 square, essentially. But it's not enough. Now knight h4. Essentially forcing me to play knight e7, but it should be a good move. I mean, this is just a good move. Anyway. And now white has to make some kind of ugly move like g3, I guess. I was thinking g3 bishop f6 or g3 bishop e5. And bishop e5 allows what? Nothing special. The h6 pawn is hanging, though. That could be kind of awkward. Maybe there's a better way to do this without allowing that. Knight e5? Bishop e5, knight g6 check. Knight takes g6. That's kind of weird. Bishop h6, same kind of thing. So this leaving my bishop away from the square isn't so simple. You can play bishop f5. And like knight e5 with the idea of knight g6. I don't think I really calculated this deeply enough. Didn't expect bishop c2. Maybe it's not so bad. Queen f6. Mule Skinner with more time than me. Maybe instead of that move, I could have played bishop c6 or something. Not a lot of squares for the queen here. Amazing position now. White has just enough material for the piece, like 3 pawns for a piece, essentially. He might have missed h4 in that position. I thought that was kind of interesting. What do I do? Now it's a different story, but Mule Skinner scaring me, you know, queen d3, not a good move, man. You were like really close to something, I think. With with h4, rook e1, it's very scary. Now white is lost. For the first time, concretely lost in this game. If h4, I might even be lost myself. In the previous position, before exchanging on d6, if white just plays h4, my queen is like paralyzed. To play queen g4. Queen g4, maybe I have a move there. Okay, queen g4. I'm not 100% certain what's going on with that. But let's see for a second here. If he plays h4 now, it's an amazing position. I don't have any squares for my queen. Queen takes e5, rook e1, here, here. I have to move the queen, some queen f6, right? And then rook takes e7. And suddenly, I'm down a pawn and like under a brutal attack, probably just like lost. So h4, queen g4, only move. The problem is he has bishop d1 in that position. Then I have queen f5 though. Maybe I should have analyzed a little further. I have queen g4. Queen g4 and I have the f5 square. He can perp my queen with like queen g4, bishop d1, queen f5, bishop c2. Then I go back to f7. It's very unclear. So I'm not sure. Maybe I was okay, but it for a minute there I thought I was actually just lost. It turns out it's kind of unclear. Welcome everybody to my yeah, queen takes d6 was sound too. He doesn't have to like lose there immediately. But I think that black's better. I'm not sure. Azimli Sitari. We queen d3, bishop f5, nothing. I was a little worried. He's got like 3 pawns for a piece. h4, queen g4, bishop d1. Maybe I get away. Queen f5, bishop c2, queen f7 or something crazy. And then like queen g8. And I might, maybe I'm better. But I was pretty terrified. Okay, so Azimli Sitari, we played a lot of games with white where we played d4, and he usually plays the Tarash. But last time we won a really nice game this week in a Lopez where he played like bishop g4. Now Steinitz variation, again, straight up Steinitz. One game this week I think I played d4, which is one approach. I'm gonna try that. But I like classical stuff with c3. Okay, so now bishop d7, we look at some kind of Capablanca, Lasker actually, not Capablanca. I don't know if Capablanca ever played this. I meant to say Lasker. Knight c3, bishop d7. Knight c3. There's a famous game, I guess it was like, was it Tarash, Lasker? The brilliant game black played with this variation. He traded pieces and then like got a piece on c5. Was it a rook or a queen? d4 is, Crawler said it's pretty much the main response nowadays. I never liked it, you know, honestly. I never really liked selling my bishop for the d4 advance, but also it simplifies a lot, Crawler. I mean, if you're looking at the game from a professional standpoint, if you want to win games, maybe trading pieces is not the most practical approach. Here a6 is a bad move. I mean, this concretely loses a pawn for black. So, I don't know. I think Azimli Sitari might have done this once before. Just lose a pawn here. A lot of people drop this pawn. Their e5 pawn is not protected. So you cannot play a6. I mean, you have to play some sort of either defensive move like knight e7. Was that Shirov Rapport, like knight e7 h4? Was that the game from the Chess Olympiad, Hungary, Latvia? Was this the position where Shirov uncorked h4? Wasn't it very similar? Was it maybe not exactly this position, something similar? Rapport played like knight e7, something similar, and then Shirov played h4, which I thought was actually brilliant, in the position where Shirov played it. Flucro says, I don't really play the Spanish, but somehow I think today it's played with a6 first. Well, I mean, both variations are independent of each other. The Steinitz and the delayed Steinitz, or Steinitz deferred. They're two different variations, I think. There are people who play one or the other. Okay, so bishop g5, or is that just helping him develop his pieces, basically? This position is very, very bad for black, objectively lost, but it's just a pawn down, so it doesn't win itself. I'm not really a big fan of bishop takes h6 because it gives black counterplay along the g file. It's also pretty badly placed piece. So I think I would prefer some sort of solid sort of prophylactic approach here. I mean, even h3, we go like fully Karpov style. I mean, I don't see any problem with this move for white. Slightly weakening my king side, but taking away every kind of counterplay, you know, that black might have here. I want to save this bishop because I'm thinking black gets some sort of play on the queen side with rook b8, and I might want to play b3 and keep the bishop to put it on like the long diagonal. Now Azim Lisitari played f6, forcing us to make a decision. I had a very similar game against somebody recently. Bishop takes h6 now. It's a different story. If I can play knight h4, knight f5 type stuff. Pawn takes f6, bishop, queen takes f6 probably benefits black a little. I'm going to take this now and take my chances. Black's position is a lot more weakened having played f6. A different story now. I like the idea of playing knight h4 or knight d4. Knight h4 gives the pawn back, though. I guess I should objectively do this. Two knights against two bishops. I was talking about this with one of my students yesterday. Kind of little known fact, you know, that I think not really talked about in chess literature. The fact that the two knights, and the grandmaster secret sort of concept, the two knights coordinate better against two bishops than bishop and knight do, you know. So you much rather have the two knights here. A lot of people think bishops are better than knights, you know, uniformly, but it's not really the case. We would much rather have two knights in this position than bishop and knight. What I'm trying to say, two knights better than bishop and knight. They're hopping in outposts. We can keep a kind of locked structure with his bad doubled pawns. No pawn breaks. The knights have a lot of outposts, so I think knights are pretty strong here. I definitely prefer for the knights. We've got queen e2 developing a piece. Threatening queen takes h6. That looks developing and nasty. He has some moves though yet. Maybe whatever I do, I mean, if I castle, yeah, let's see what happens here. Now I can castle queenside. That's probably as good as anything at this point. Some counterplay for black. But if you guys get a perspective on, you know, on anything in this discussion, I know that black didn't play this well, but if we get any perspective, you get a perspective on how I think about the game in a kind of defensive, prophylactic way. So even when I'm up a pawn, if I have a way to stop my opponent from doing things, this is Karpov style, you know. I'm not a Karpov, like, I don't know, a super fan or something of Karpov. This is best move, rook g8, trying to get some kind of counterplay. But I like Karpov a lot, one of my favorite players. And understanding this prophylactic thinking in chess is really, really important. Now knight h4 is interesting. Defending g2 and maintaining my threats. Let's go for it. Kind of the Nimzovician position in a way. Locked structure with outposts, 2 knights against 2 bishops. See, certain players had an affinity for knights, like Chigorin, Nimzovich, and they started to understand about that time. Chigorin and Nimzovich began to understand really the power of blockade and strategy here. Not letting the position get opened up for the bishops to become very powerful. I've got queen takes h6. But I like how Azim Lusitari, he usually finds the most incisive try. And his score against me is no reflection of how well he's played. I mean, he's played some good games against me. And many of these games that I won are very, very close. Knight h4. The Big Rip says, what do I mean by Karpov player? Yeah, this is a player, who was world champion before Kasparov, after Fischer and before Kasparov. And he's the greatest exponent of basically winning by stopping your opponent from being able to do anything. Winning by, like, defense. We have the saying in American football, right, that the best offense is a good defense. And that's kind of like the Karpov philosophy to chess. If you can first prevent your opponent from doing anything, and then you slowly start to strangle them to death like a boa constrictor, it's actually a very efficient and effective way to play the game. And that's what I'm talking about. So being aware of what your opponent's trying to do at all times and preventing it before it even starts to happen. It's not a way of thinking that everybody really uses. Most people think about what they're trying to do, a little bit about what the other guy's trying to do, but more about what they're trying to do. And what I'm trying to talk about is a philosophy of the game where you're actually focusing more on preventing what the other guy does than necessarily what you're trying to do to him as far as attacking goes. So prevention is more important than attack. The first priority is not letting the guy do anything. That's the basic philosophy. Interesting. But what makes chess great is that there's more than one way to approach chess philosophically. You don't have to necessarily play one style. You can go back and forth between different styles. Azim Lusitari here, thinking a lot. I don't know. It's weird to see him using so much time. He could play something like maybe bishop e5, rook b8, queen e7. But he's facing the loss of a second pawn on h6 here. Castle queenside. Or b3. Or I just ignore it with queen takes h6. Queen takes h6, rook takes b2. b3. Or we could go absolutely full-on Chigorin style. Full-on Chigorin style here with knight d1, man. That is serious defensive move. I think it's a little over the top, though. I don't think we need to go. We need to go to that extreme here of playing knight d1. But I've got to be alert tactically. Black's pieces are active. b2 is a kind of sensitive point in white's position. I've got to be careful. We are better developed in the sense that our king is castled and our rooks are connected. But black's still potential dangerous pieces. These bishops, the rooks, they could cause some damage if I'm not careful. But I don't see anything great for black. No pawn breaks. That's the most important thing. I mean, just f5. So it's hard to open lines for the bishops. The knights rule, you know, if you can't open lines for the bishops. Outposts, no pawn breaks. Knights are stronger than bishops. Queen takes h6, trades a weak pawn for a strong potential pawn. Rook g5, active move. Very logical. This was definitely one of the moves I considered here. We could sacrifice a pawn with a knight f5, kind of like blocking theme. It looks like not a bad idea. Kind of action killer. His king looks very open though. If he takes an f5, gotta watch out for skewers against my queen though. I don't want to like bishop f4 to happen or something. Do I have any in-between move here? f4. f4 is actually possibly a strong move. He could play rook g3, I guess. f4. Well, he has several moves. Bishop takes f4. No good. f4. His crazy moves like bishop a3, that's... Alright, anyway, I'm going to stick with my original plan here. Look at the position. I mean, he's threatening bishop f4 now. But look at the position. Wow, I thought he would take with the rook. Was there something concretely wrong with that? But now it's like, I mean, g4. This rook is totally screwed. I didn't see a forced win after rook takes f5, but he didn't like it. Queen f8. Trying to play bishop a3, I guess. Black's pawn structure, just a complete disaster. He's playing without a rook. Alright, instructive game. FIDE Master Strength is a relatively unrated account, but I said I would play it. So he's got 27 games. I'd really like to ask players to have like 50 games if they challenge me, but it's unrated. We'll let it slide. I'm gonna reserve the right to make make exceptions in judgment. It looks like a strong player, probably. I don't know. I could refuse him based on my rule not to play players who have at least 50 games, but we'll let it slide because it's a chance to possibly play with. If he's true to his word, FIDE Master Strength. Alright, so d4. It's a blitz game, guys, so we got to play a little bit faster. 5-4. Accelerated Dragon. Marazzi. The so-called Marazzi bind, named after Hungarian great Geza Marazzi. Geza. In Hungarian, everybody, you know, says our family name first. So, Marazzi Geza. 5-4 increment, quite a bit faster than the typical like 8-3 games. But I'm willing to play this time patrol. As I said, every stream, anything between like 5-3 and 8-3 is good. I play this position a lot. Great channel, thank you. You subscribed. Watch later when I get alerts. You're welcome for the channel, and I hope you enjoy. So this move order I've employed here, I've been using because when you play like the typical move, bishop d7, a lot of people have been using knight c2, and I don't like this variation for black, where black has to keep all the pieces on the board and no space. So I prefer trading pieces, and then a5, which is like a blockading strategy. The classic strategy against Marazzi is to play for pawn breaks, basically b5, trying to undermine white's center. The other thing what I'm doing instead is like basically trying to set up kind of a defensive sort of fortress position on the black squares. Black will try to create a kind of solid blockade based on dark square strategy. Queen b3, interesting move. I guess this is he's trying to dissuade me from moving my bishop on c8. Also there's bishop b6, so that could be kind of inconvenient. But I mean, not to say I can't play bishop d7, because if he plays queen takes b7, I have rook b8 and rook takes b2, which actually looks pretty good for black. So I don't think he's actually stopping me from playing that bishop d7 move. But knight d5, I don't know. After knight d5, could be a little bit complicated. I can also play knight d7. That's the basic idea of my setup. I think it's consequent here. Knight d7, bishop takes g7, king takes g7. Not really sure what's going on. Queen b3 is not a move I've faced before. This may be just inspiration over the board, or maybe it's some unusual line that I don't know about. But it's interesting. He's not moving any pawns. Never seen this move, and I never want to see it again. Queen b3. So not sure there. I mean, I really was strongly tempted to play bishop d7 when I don't think that he can take this pawn advantageously. But I'm sticking to kind of my original plan, which is dark square, sort of dark square strategy. Get the knight to c5, and in most cases white is a little bit better in these variations. There's not a lot you can do about it. Playing the black side of the Marazzi bind is the reason why most people don't want to play the accelerated dragon. Despite what anybody says, any videos you've seen, any books that have written otherwise, it's very, very hard for black to ever be able to win as black in Marazzi bind. It's not really realistic for black to expect to like play for a win in this opening. So it's kind of problematic. It's enough to make a lot of people not play the accelerated dragon at all, in fact. Alright, so knight to d5 now. He's not threatening anything in this position. But I'm certainly not threatening anything. So we're looking at knight c5, I guess? And then he has like queen e3, perhaps? What else can I do? Well, I can play e6, weakening my d6 pawn. There's also a possibility of trying to blockade on the dark squares, which was the original strategy. e6. Yeah, I like e6 actually. I don't really like this visitor here on d5, and I don't think that I have to put up with it. Doesn't mean that I can't play e5 later on, but I am weakening my pawn along the d file. I'm aware of what's going on there, but kind of typical in a lot of Sicilians to play with that. I think I prefer not to weaken my king side further here, but I'm not sure. But consequently, f6. Should I play f6? A little worried about that. Now, knight f4 I didn't expect. I expected knight e3. Knight f4 is a kind of slightly weird square for that knight. Need to try to set up a solid position here. Maybe queen f6. One way to defend the dark squares around my king is with my queen. But this isn't very ambitious for me. Just like trying to hold the position by trading queens. It's a fast game and I'm not really confident here. I never played against queen b3 before. I've never been in a situation before, but it's a bit weird. Now he's not trading queens, which is okay by me, but he's got some tricks, looks like. He's got some tricks. That's kind of a problem. Knight c5, we sack a pawn for... Oh, man, that's awkward. Actually, b2's hanging in some lines. What do I do now? Rook d8. Well, I can take on b2. Rook d8, I guess. I don't think he wants to lose this pawn on b2. Played this move. Now knight c5 or knight e5. This is what I meant by dark square blockade, kind of. Everything focusing on dark squares. b6 here. Probably necessary. So as to be able to develop my bishop without hanging my d6 pawn. But I think at this point the position is kind of leveled out. It's probably about equal, objectively. You might argue black has some chances to play for the initiative. I don't think objectively I can really be better. White played very solid, without risk. Now b3, a lot of pawns on white squares. What's black's general strategy here? I don't know, that's the problem. I don't really have a break, so a4 I have. I don't want to lose my solidity. Just a neutral move. Queen is good here. He's trading pieces. Looks about equal. Maybe g5. We start focusing on dark squares. Bad bishop, good bishop concept. That's a nasty move. Queen e3. I've got, d5 is very risky now. Having played g5, I don't want to do this so much anymore. If I wanted to, I could have tried to play d5 earlier. But I think in this position now, committing to g5, this type of plan, and d5 isn't really the right idea. I'm trying to make his bishop bad, and maybe have a good endgame with good bishop against bad bishop. So I'm not looking to like let his bishop free with d5 or b5. That's still in keeping with the general theme here, which was awkward moments. I don't really want to play e5, so I really expected him to like trade queens there. I think that he should be happy with an equal position. So I'm actually playing for a win now. I think trading queens is okay. Maybe it's not the right idea, but let's go for it. G4. We're getting a little low on time. Wow. Okay. So this guy's very, very solid. Technical, probably technical player. Playing the Marazzi, fast, like kind of happy to trade pieces. Maybe I have to be careful here. Rook c1, very solid for white. Queen there. What is this? Insta moves f5. Man, that's pretty amazing. So fast. A lot of checks here. Objectively, this is a draw. I mean, I can't really try to win. I think d5. I don't want to have this backward pawn. Yeah, it's okay for me. I mean, draw is good. Okay, dude. I think it's okay. Good game. Not used to playing the blitz games here on the stream, though. Got me pulling my hair out. My hair is kind of disturbed after this tense blitz game. But that's kind of the goal. I play pretty aggressively with g5. Kind of playing for two results, like winning... 3 results, like winning, losing, or drawing once I play g5. Normally I play kind of more solid in those kind of Marazzis. Alright guys, last game. I didn't see it was so late. Went over time here, so I should have stopped the stream there, but we'll play this one last game. Queen b3, I've never seen anything like that, but it might be some known idea. What's the best opening? Why is it the Polish? I played the Polish yesterday. It's funny that I never played the Polish before because, as I said during my stream yesterday, it just makes sense if I play a6 on move 1 in a bunch of tournament games, as I have against e4. Why the heck didn't I ever play b5? I actually had a friend of mine, a good friend who I learned chess with, who was also a big fan of Karpov, and he actually played the Polish. And I always thought it was weird, but the Polish is interesting. Not a totally bad opening. Not really objectively correct, but it has its merits. d3 now. So the plan is c3, d4 there, you know, to try to break up the black pawn center. But d3 is not too bad. It's better than h3. I always tell the story how Miles played that. That's the only time I ever beat him in a number of games. It's Anthony. But h3 is not really a good move. Bishop g5, don't like it philosophically because you're trading my bad bishop off here. I can capture either way, with the knight or with the queen. I guess the concept I like is queen takes. It's a little slower than knight takes and castles, but it keeps my knight going to a good square on f6. But I think there's a real argument for knight takes e7 and using like knight g6, knight f4 type ideas. So I'm not certain that queen takes is the right capture there. But crazy here, you know, knight d2, it's pretty passive. And I thought if your idea is to play f4, it would be a little more reasonable, but this is really passive for white. Really, really passive. Is queen b3 theory, Plucro? I sort of doubt it, but it's absolutely... It's one of those moves that's like maybe never really been looked at, but it's probably playable. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it, you know? It's just impossible to discover all the possibilities in chess. So here, how do we do this, you know? How do we do this? White's pretty solid. Crazy. I'm going to play a prophylactic move. Favorite theme for today. Not committing myself. D5. A lot of computer engines are probably going crazy right here. D5, D5, D5. But, you know, I mean, once you do d5, there's no going back. And then I have kind of like hanging pawns. He can like lock it up with pawn takes pawn, c4, try to sort of blockade. But I imagine that d5 is certainly not a bad move. I was thinking about just going off on the king's side. King's Indian style. But as soon as I close the center, he starts to try to open it up. That's the problem. Maybe that's where d5 sort of makes some sense. I have to play this position so I have more than one idea. I can't just, I don't think just like f4, g5. If I play f4, c3, g5, d4, cd, cd, g4, and race him here, I'm not really convinced, you know, in this race type position. f4, c3, g5, h3, h5, d4, cd, cd, g4. Why did I play king h8? So, I don't know. Last game of the stream, guys. All right, let's go for it. See what happens here. F4. I'm going to go for the kingside, the closed kingside attack. But I think that white has resources here. Not only c3, but maybe trying to blockade the kingside. But the jury is out. I mean, d5, it might have been better objectively to keep the tension, more tension in the position. I remember losing a game like this in blitz not that long ago. And he played c4. I don't like that as much as c3. There's also the evacuation approach, like king f2, but I don't think that's really going to be optimal here. If you try to run away from the king side, in some positions that's good, but it just doesn't look like white really has time to do that effectively here. So I prefer c3, trying to break the center and turn the focus of the game to try to distract me from this wing attack by breaking in the center. Now c4, he no longer has that possibility. He has b4, which doesn't open the position as much as c3, d4. He can't play b4 right away. And now he's going into the corner. Going into the corner, and not to say he's getting mated. It's not like it's a King's Indian. Rook g8. Korchnoi would like this position. a5, rook a7. Bring it across somehow. My queen is in the way of the rook transfer. Guys, this is my last game for today. We're going to be back tomorrow. One more Blitz and Classical stream for the week. 10 a.m. CEST. FM Strength says you're really unpleasant for a player who doesn't understand tactics in Marazzi. But when you play against other masters, especially in a blitz match, you need to prepare yourself carefully. Yeah, Marazzi is a position in a line where there's not a lot of tactics. Queen e1 though, he's got this queen e1 to play like queen h4. If I play g4, queen h4 is a problem. Maybe we just play rook h6. Sorry, rook g6. Rook g6 here. It's a bit awkward. Some ideas of kicking his queen off of h4. I don't have to commit to playing h5. We just keep an option open. Basically, black should try to keep as many options open as possible. Rook h6 actually. A g4 now may be strong. Because he can't do now queen h4 I don't like so much. So this looks good now. He tries queen h4, we can kick him out with queen g7 and rook h6. Oh, this break is pretty tough for white to deal with. He might have to take it, which he doesn't really want to do, and try to defend that position. Yeah, now knight takes, and there is the e3 square, which is a very, very powerful advanced outpost for black's knight. So that's really the most important thing going on here. I'm not going to checkmate him, most likely. I just want to get maximum pressure on the G file. I'm not going to checkmate him in the short run, maybe in the long run. I want to get maximum pressure. Actually, knight e3 just wins by force. Okay. I almost didn't play it because I thought it was committing myself. But it just wins by force the exchange, which should be enough to win the game. Or does it? Yeah, queen takes h4, rook takes h4, rook h6. It does look like it wins the exchange. Is there any sort of trick? Rook f2, knight c2. Besides just being a good outpost, we have this double threat. I think the c4 move was wrong. And now take rook h6 or rook g4. Rook h6 or rook g4. I guess this is... Why do I like this better than rook g4 actually? This would keep my rook on the g file. On the G file. Yeah, maybe that makes more sense. Come to think of it. Right? Makes more sense. Okay. Yeah, H6 is not an open file. Probably better to do it this way. So, multi-threat move, have to lose exchange, and black's probably better overall, sort of positionally here. This pawn is weak. I have rook b8 and like a5, a4, a3 on the queen side. His knights don't have good outposts. That's the most important feature. You know, he can't find an outpost for his knights. And this is very unpleasant. A5. If he could lock the position, it would be a draw even if I was up the exchange. There are many positions like that. But if he can't lock the position, the rook should win the game. A4. Rook back. This is very awkward. Knight here. Terrible. It's terrible. If I let him play a4 there, I might have a problem. So I should play a4 myself, making sure that he can't lock the queen side, and then we can shift very quickly here, as you can see. Rook a7. Kind of still hard to break through. Bishop g4. Pawn takes pawn. Very close position to be up the exchange, but it's bad. I mean, this looks like this knight is really in trouble. I can stick the bishop on g4. Cut his king off. Principle of two weaknesses, like two sides can't defend. Maximum rookage, rook space. These guys are very mobile, so it's looking pretty grim. Knight is not happy. How do we finish this off here? Well, I think this is one way to do it. We got to do something before we run out of time, though. Snap the h-pawn and then trade everything. Well, actually, I'm I'm more than trading here. This is pretty nasty. You have maybe one move. Yeah. Rook A1, and that's what I figure. Now, rook takes F1. No, you had rook D1, still lost. Yeah, this is with check. That's the problem. Yeah, rook D1 wouldn't have helped too much. All right, crazy. Thanks for the game. Thank you everybody for tuning into my stream today. It was a lot of fun. Rook F2 pins the knight. Wins the knight outright. It does. I didn't see that. Yeah, it won the knight outright. You're right. I didn't like see the rook sacrifice right away. So I do that a lot. Overlook a few one move tactics now and then. We'll be back tomorrow, guys. I'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. Also support the channel and my YouTube channel, as well as here the stream on Twitch if you can via PayPal. There's a button everywhere on Twitch, on YouTube. If you want to make a donation, I much appreciate it, and that's awesome. So if you can afford it, just even $5 a year would be terrific. I appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow. And don't forget, Sunday I have a simul every week on my stream, 6:30 p.m. CEST on Sundays for 20-25 players in classical chess. Usually like 40 minutes with a 40-second increment. Check it out on Sundays. Okay, guys. We'll see you later.